All right, our next assignment, assignment 5, is all about learning how to animate simple animatics within Photoshop using sources we've already developed, or at least one source we've already developed. So this is what a Gif animation is. It's a sequence of frames, usually low res, that when played with a certain amount of timing and control of timing, give the illusion of movement. And this is a very simple GIF animation, but hard to accomplish. It's called a walk cycle, so that when you play it in an internet browser, and I always use Safari for this, it will play with the timing you've set so that the creature appears to move. Right? It's easy to do when you're just doing outlines and you're drawing everything, because you create every movement you need. It's much more challenging to do when you're using composite elements. So let's say if I wanted to make a snapping turtle snap, I would need images of that turtle's head with its mouth closed, and then I would need to composite images of that turtle's head with its mouth open, and I'd want images of that turtle's head where the head is in the shell, kind of compressed in, and images where it's stretching out of the shell, and so on and so forth. And then I would use those to create a cycle of that snapping turtle's head coming out, opening its mouth, clamping down, and going back in. So we're combining those two things. We're going to do a lot of our own image creation and a lot of compositing of found materials. And the only requirement I have for this project is that you feature some sort of transformation, so it becomes more storytelling than just a movement test. And the other requirement is that you have to use at least one thing you've already designed and developed in the class. So here I'm going to be using my setting, my background that I designed for assignment 1. And we call these in animation assets. So my fantasy landscape, I want to open up my PSD file, and this will be one of my assets. But I need to simplify it for use. When you are dealing with animating with a setting, think of it like a play. So this is my stage set, and it's got some features that are more dynamic than others, right? So I need to work with this to figure out how to animate this setting in a way that I'm happy with, so that then I can have characters interact with it. So there's a lot of ways to animate settings. One way is to pan the camera. So I could start up here at this temple and then zoom out for a wide shot for all of this. But the first thing I'm worried about in animating is that this water in this still picture needs to be moving for it to be animating. So that's the first challenge. Those are the first set of assets I'm going to build. If we look at my storyboard plan, 9 frames, I then introduce my character. So my next set of assets will come from that folder, which, let's see, from assignment 2, and I want to open that up, that PSD, or I can get away with just opening, just to keep it simpler, the already merged together PNG file. So this file, and I'm going to build my character assets. Now in order to make my character do the things I want it to do, like walk into the scene or be revealed in the scene, and to start glowing and to shake its head especially, I need to build assets for that, which I'll show you how to do. So I'm going to need 2 different asset files just to even start building this. So let me start with the character, just because we always think of animation as being character-based. So before I do anything, I'm going to make a new Photoshop file, and I'm going to call this my name, Carl Fry, and then I'm going to call it character assets for assignment 5. And I want it to be 10 inches by 10 inches at 100 pixels per inch. That is not a printable resolution. That is a screen resolution. It's a little bit higher than the standard screen resolution of 72 pixels per inch. And that gives me 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels. Okay? There it is. So now I'm going to bring in my character asset, and you'll get used to doing this. I pull down this Photoshop file, and instead of using the move tool and just clicking that and moving it over, which would only move over one layer, I'm going to select the layer over here, which later on will give me the option of selecting multiple layers at a time, and I will drop it onto that. And you see the resolution difference, right? What this tells me is if I wanted to, I could animate my character as a setting. I could start the story of a little flea on the back of my creature. I have enough resolution to then zoom out and eventually get to where I'm seeing the whole creature within the frame. So I'm going to animate the creature within this 10 by 10 inch, 100 pixel, so I should say 1,000 by 1,000 pixel scene. I want to get the whole creature on there, but I make it as large as possible on here so that when I bring it on to my actual final animation, which will also be 1,000 by 1,000 pixels, I am able to shrink it. I am not going to be forced to enlarge it. All right? So for my animation, this asset is big enough, even though it's so much smaller than it was originally. Then I can close this. I don't need to save it. I've built up my first asset. What other assets do I need? Well, I want this character to start walking into the frame. So if I look, I did some research, and I found these walk cycles, and you're encouraged to search. You can do a Google image search and research GIF animations. You can even search by animated file types only. And this was the simplest walk cycle I found. It was 9 frames for a similar creature. So I'm going to open this up with Photoshop, and you'll see how this can help inform what I do. I'm very quickly going to reverse it all, just so I can use it. And I'm looking for the timeline window. I'm going to select all layers here, bring them down, take them away, and now I am going to select each layer, all 9 layers, say select all. I can get rid of the timeline now, and flip them. So I could just do Command T and then right click and then say flip horizontal. So I want the creature to go this way. Hit return, do it with the next. And this will be just a quick introduction to how animation in Photoshop works. Select all. Notice that each frame doesn't look very good, but together the movement is what you're going for. Like here, there's a leg missing, but that's because one leg is overlapping the other leg in this very simple cycle. Transform, flip it, hit return. And there'll be a lot of this kind of tedious repetition in animation. Which is why it's so important to have a plan for what you're going for, so you're not wasting a lot of work. Now, whenever you're changing the shape of your creature, it's easy to make your creature change color, or to change the lighting or the coloring of your creature. But whenever it changes shape, as it will here as it's walking, that requires a lot more individual animation assets. But those are the big wow moments. So you choose where you want that to happen, no matter how brief, and then you make sure you have the tools to do it correctly. So basically, in order to get a walk cycle like this, I need to build up those assets out of my composite, where I can move the legs into these different positions, move the head, move the neck. And there are some tools in Photoshop that are very helpful for that, especially one I'll be teaching you today called Puppet Warp for building character assets. For building setting assets like adding clouds, adding lighting or a sun, those are tools we already know. Very much like compositing a landscape, you'll just bring on new layers as new assets. And then moving them around is easy enough. It's changing their shape that takes a little bit more effort. Okay, now I've just edited all these frames. So I have 9 frames now, and all I did was flip them so they're going in the right direction. Now how do I animate them within Photoshop? I have 9 different layers with 9 different images. I go to Window and find the timeline, and I'm using the storyboard view here, which is the view we want. We don't want to have the stacked view of the layers. That's a little bit more advanced, more like Flash. So instead, we're going to change always to the storyboard frame by frame view. We're going to cycle it through our animation forever, so it keeps looping, so we can keep analyzing it. And then once we have the asset frames we want all set up in our final stage, we're going to make frames from the layers. And all this does is program the little eyeball. And then you set the timing. And to use the timing of this animation, it's 0.2 seconds. It's a pretty quick animation. But it gives you a nice, graceful movement. And sure enough, there it is animated. All right, now I have these assets. I am going to select all of those layers, which we know give a believable movement. I have them all selected. I'm going to drag and drop them onto my folder. And once they're all selected, I can transform them to fit my character. This is the beauty of character animation and of having a structure that's believable. Everything can work. Now to make sure I did it correctly, let me go down to one layer, just take its opacity down. And now with a lower opacity, I'll select all those layers again. And now I just want to line up the joints, the hips, the bone. The head is not going to match, but I can use the other features that we've learned to make the skeleton match in other respects. Notice when you're transforming multiple layers like this, which is very helpful for animating, you lose the ability to warp. But you are still able to skew, distort, rotate, scale, and that should be really all I need for this, because I'm just using this as a guide. All right, so I've got the joints, especially of the legs and tail, hips, rib cage, all that's worked out. Let me take this back up to 100%, and let me show you how that animation still works. I'm going to create a frame animation with the timeline tool. This is just a quick test. Flatten frames from layers, or make frames from layers. Get rid of these first 2 frames, which are not yet animated, and then play this through at 0.2 seconds forever. So even though I distorted it, the movement still works. Everything's proportioned to itself. Yes, the head looks ridiculous, but I'm going to be replacing that with my own creature's head. So this is the walk cycle I want to be informed by. You could try to just make it up on your own, but animators are always hungry for reference. They go to zoos, they take video footage, they do drawings to make movement look believable. Now, GIFs do not need to showcase believable movement, but if that's something you're going for, research, find movement tests that help. Okay, so now these are the assets I know I need, but I need them with this character. So what do I need?